Hello, I'm John Delancey, Chief Technology Officer with Premier Insights, and I'm here with our founder and president and CEO and resident Dr. Brandon Roberts. Today we're going to be talking about an article that just came out from the CFPB end of January. The title was CFPB's Enforcement Work in 2023 and What Lies Ahead. So there was a couple of things that stuck out to us that we wanted to discuss today. Um, Brandon, I guess what was your initial reaction when you saw this article come out?
Yeah, sure. So in the press release that they put out, they're really signaling their posture for the coming year.
Mhm.
And I guess there are two things that really stuck out. The first is the continued emphasis on enforcement and the enforcement side of the CFPB, using that to basically regulate by enforcement. But the
Yeah.
other piece that I thought was very significant was for the first time, they've going to be employing technologists, officially having people who are technology people, in
Mhm.
addition to economists, attorneys, and so forth, and using that as a tool to, as they say, ramp up their efforts in this year in 24. And I just thought that was really interesting, and just wonder what that's going to look like, because it's definitely something new. Uh, not only on the enforcement side, but on the regulatory side as well. You just don't see an emphasis on that, or even anyone from an examination team that understands technology, or has that sort of emphasis.
Yeah, no, that's it. Frankly, I was kind of shocked when they started announcing last year that they had just built that technology team, and now it's really being put into good, well, good use for them, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
it's kind of shocking that it's taken this long for them to put that kind of focus on it, but it does signal sort of a shift in it's a sea change that I think
Yeah.
everyone needs to be aware of. Um, Banks and supporting third party firms as well. If the regulators are using the technology, we kind of need to be using it too. So yeah, there were when we first talked about this. Yeah, let's talk more about a little bit more about the idea that they're ramping up the enforcement side specifically, and what that really means and how that's sort of different from how things have gone up to now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really an unprecedented number of cases that they've brought. Many of them have been redlining related. We've
Mhm.
talked about that quite a bit.
Yeah.
But other issues too, that broadened it out even beyond just banks, other institutions that would be under their purview. So the enforcement side has been very, very aggressive. And I mean, by historic standards, it's already aggressive. So the fact
Yeah.
that they're announcing, they're going to ramp those efforts up even more, or significant, because I think when they're working from the enforcement side versus the regulatory side, and so just to kind of explain, kind of define our terms here on the regulatory side, the the agency is regulating the institution, so they have to work with the institution. There's some back and forth. There's some common interests there. They want the bank to do well. They want the bank to perform, and so forth.
Sure.
And they've got other obligations that are related. So there's a lot of things at play there, and there's a relationship. On the enforcement side, there's none of that. The enforcement side is just a lawsuit, basically
Yeah.
litigation, coming in with their attorneys. I call it kind of putting the gun to their head and saying, "Hey, this is what you're gonna do, or else it's gonna go to
Yeah.
court. We're gonna prosecute you, and all that type of thing." So the fact that they're ramping that up, I think, is hugely significant, because I think most people would think it's already ramped up.
Yeah.
The other thing, I guess, I just wanted to quote from the article, because this is what really stuck out. It said 2023 also marked the first time that a team of technologists dedicated to enforcement matters joined the CFPB. And then they say this cross disciplinary team of technology experts has increased their capacity to enforce the law when emerging technologies harm consumers. And then they go on to talk about the things we already know, where they have economists and attorneys and so forth. To me, this is potentially a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think we're at the very early stages here of seeing all everyone's seen ChatGPT and all the crazy generative AI stuff that's come out, and it's amazing technology, and we are still at the very beginning of what's coming there. But what's harder to remember or harder to envision is how that same technology is going to be used, or similar technologies really are going to be used in applications like this, in business in general, in finance, but in this case in regulation and in enforcement of regulation. So yeah, I think it's no surprise to anyone that data in particular, has exploded over the last several years, couple of decades. Suddenly we have terabytes of data, at our at our disposal and at the regulators' disposal when they want to come review a bank, that have to be sifted through, and there's these same types of machine learning algorithms are being used to make decisions on whether to lend money to a given customer, and are those models doing that fairly? Is there implicit bias in those models? And that's a whole subject we can talk about for hours or days. I certainly can, but in this context, though, it's a signal that we've entered a new era. No longer are we talking about a team of, and I don't know what it looked like. You probably know better than I do, but a team of a few or 5 or 10 or whatever statisticians, economists, sort of manually trolling through spreadsheets of data. No, we're talking about a technology team with cloud-based resources and computers that only NASA could have run a decade ago. Now, you can fire up in 30 seconds to analyze and find patterns that no human could ever find. So it's an important change. If the regulators are going to use that technology to find these problems, the banks need to be using the same technology to find the problems before they're problems, because they're gonna get found. um, and
So let me,
go ahead, sorry.
no, so let me ask you. So, I look at the data and the analysis, econometrics, statistics, whatever modeling, whatever label you want to put on it, and that's always been our world for economists and statisticians and so forth. With technology, the tools are there, and the computing power, cloud computing. I mean, you just have so much power to do so many different things. And then on top of that, you have the machine learning aspect of the models, which that you kind of alluded to with artificial intelligence and so forth, where
Mm-hmm.
you're really no longer limited to, okay, what model can I envision? How many ways can I think of to look at this? But now you've been able to leverage a technology that can do that in just almost light speed, and locate issues or analyze enormous sets of data. And so I guess when you look at this press release and you see technology, do you think of it from the standpoint of more data? Because it seems to me that many of the technology innovations of the last several years have really been focused on data and analyzing, managing, big quantities of data. Do you see it from that perspective, or do you think that there's other things that could come? I guess, what do you think the CFPB's intention is here? Is it data oriented, or is it beyond
that? I definitely think, right now it's data oriented. Just like you said, the technology around data and then the quantity of data as a result that's now available to us is just, it has advanced so crazily recently. So yeah, I think primarily the CFPB is going to be focused on that right now, using these tools and technologies that are available. And look, these are free technologies. It's not even these aren't proprietary algorithms that have been, this is stuff literally 10 and 12-year-olds can download and start running. So they're going to be using that technology with the expertise behind it to analyze these reams and reams of data and again find those patterns. That's what they're going to be looking for. They're going to be looking for bias. They're going to be looking for discrimination, whether intentional or not, against these protected classes. And they're going to be able to analyze thousands and thousands of variables and billions of data points, rather than just credit score, loan amount, DTI and geographic tract. So no, it's gonna get pretty crazy. And like I said, banks are gonna need to keep up with that. And thing is, it's a race you can never win. The technology is always going to improve. The CFPB and the other regulators and the government and whoever else is going to continue to employ those technologies. They clearly have it top of mind. So banks are going to have to keep up.
So, we with our company, we have really began to embrace technology a few years ago and really saw, the capability there. And, recent, I guess when it just struck me when I read that a minute ago, cross-disciplinary team.
Mm-hmm.
I think of that with Premier, and that's kind of what we are.
Exactly.
You've got
Yep.
these merging of these different streams that now, were separate, and now they're still kind of separate, but they're slowly becoming one.
Precisely.
And
Yeah.
I was just some of the tools that you've shown me and the different things you've done have seemed so far advanced of where we thought we were. Thinking,
Yep.
oh well, we developed this great model that does such and such, and you come up with something that's like, blows it out of the water. Way
Well,
past that. But so I guess when I read that, that's what I thought. I mean, it seemed that
yep.
they're sort of tapping into that same thing.
Exactly.
You agree
That's
with
the
that?
thing. Yeah, absolutely. I am not a statistician. I think I failed calculus 2 twice, but
You
managed to get
become
through. I
one
did pass
anyway.
it.
You become
Yeah,
one
I
anyway.
passed eventually. But that's not my strong suit, and nor is programming yours or the other PhDs on the team. But that's the thing. I've picked up a little bit of stats, a little bit of math, and picking up more. And you and our other economists and statisticians are doing the same thing from the other side. You're picking up more of the technology side. So as we each begin to understand what the other is capable of, that merging is going to continue to make more and more powerful technology implementations possible, and it's going to far outstrip what any one person or any few people, regardless of how expert they are, could accomplish. I think you had a cool anecdote from one of your professors and how he used to have to run regressions.
Yeah.
What was that story?
Yeah, he, of course, gosh, when I was, he was in his 80s when I was in school, and there weren't any computers,
Yeah.
so all the calculations were done by hand, not because that necessarily was required, just you
Mhm.
didn't have an option. So with regression, you start adding variables; it's exponential, in terms of the
Mhm.
calculation. So once you get to 3 variables, I mean, it's just, you go for just explodes, and so it
Yeah.
took him months to hand calculate all his regression equations and all his data. And he had a 3-ring binder full of paper, and he had it all done and thought he had it all correct. He was ready. He was at the University of Chicago, the premier economic school in the world, getting ready to do his dissertation, dissertation defense, walks in, and one of the professors probably started questioning him, and he realized that he had made an error somewhere in that 3-ring binder of paper. He
Mhm.
made a mistake, transposed one number, and
Yeah.
it threw everything off. And so he
Mhm.
wasn't able to pass. He had to go back. It took him another 6 to 9 months to recalculate
Oh
everything
my gosh.
again. And so you think of it now, even with the statistical packages that we have. I mean, we can run almost an unlimited number of variables, and it's even with a large data set, it's fast. But I don't. I mean, the capability of with the tech.
No, that's yeah. I've played with it, and I was able to ask ChatGPT to write me a Python script that runs a linear regression model for 3 variables, and the whole process from asking the computer to do it for me to running the regression took less than 5 minutes.
Right.
Uh, yeah, I mean it's insane, and that's a very simple use case.
Right.
It can do exactly the same thing with 3 or 3,000 variables and dimensionality reduction and all those things, and it can handle billions of rows of data to feed into that model. And if I can do that as a complete neophyte in the world of statistics and math, what do you imagine the CFPB and their team of dedicated technology experts can do? So yeah, no, it's a new world we're entering here. Um,
So, so do you think? So I guess I'm thinking of, okay. So what should banks be aware of? What banks would be the most vulnerable, if that's the right word, or the most had the most exposure? Um, because I guess I'm one part of me is wondering, with all the data that's stored out there now. I mean, everything's electronic. It's stuck on servers. Banks have enormous servers or capability to store information. It's all sitting out there. Not much of it is managed. I mean, is that a whole treasure trove of data that before it was just too jumbled, too unorganized, too esoteric to really do anything with from a regulatory enforcement side to examine a bank? Is that now on the table possibly with that? Are those tools capable of maybe contextualizing that information, that raw information, in a way that's quickly enough to be useful? Do you think that's one of the things, or what's your thought about that?
yeah, no, I definitely think so. I mean, we've been producing large amounts of data long before we had the ability to analyze it or put it into good use. I think we're past that point now. At this point, the data's there, and you better be looking at it. You better be analyzing it. The good news is you don't have to do it in house, and I think that's to your point or to your question as to who's the most vulnerable here. What banks are the most vulnerable here? I think it's going to be the smaller ones, the small and mid-sized banks that that are producing these large quantities of data and doing these large quantities of business, but don't necessarily have the in-house teams to analyze it. And look, there are very few banks of any size in the world who have the in-house expertise to analyze all that data and find the needle in the haystack in terms of what's important to reduce their risk and keep out of the crosshairs, so to speak. Um, so that's I think, but the ones that are least far along, I guess, in that journey of hiring their own in-house data scientists and teams of people, those are the ones that are going to be caught significantly off guard. So reach out to us. We'll be happy to help,
Yeah.
or anybody like us. Really, you need to have a third party. You need to have someone that's looking at this with you, helping you figure out what data you have, what data you need, and what that data is telling you. The last thing you want is to discover that fact and discover the story your data is telling when the CFPB is telling you what the story is, because it's probably not going to go in your favor. Even the most ethically minded uh, banks in the world, the most ethically minded people in the world, there's always bias that can be found. Always. um, Not intentional even, but it's there. It will be there, and that's the purpose of our teams and teams like us, is to explain what's happening and to find those potentials for bias and risk and help you to eliminate them before they become a real problem. So
I want to ask you one other question. This is maybe asking you to speculate, or
I'm good at speculating. What you got?
you're like me. You're an expert on your own opinion, right? So,
Absolutely.
but I guess one of the things that is would be scary to me as a bank, in knowing, even you, and you don't have to really dig into it much. I mean, you can just have a look at what Chat GPT will do, and some
Mm-hmm.
people are skeptical about that, but I mean, there's no question. I mean, it's
Yep.
unbelievable. It's taken what we thought was science fiction and made it reality.
Absolutely.
It's just really, it's just crazy. So I guess if I was a bank, and you talked about the smaller banks, and I think any bank of any size that has data, and maybe doesn't have the capability to really analyze that data, or the know-how to really know what to look at, is the prospect of an artificial intelligence, machine learning type application turned loose on some huge volume of data. And find things like you were saying, biases, different things you can't even conceive of it. But
Sure.
because of that computing power and able to do so many different iterations and possibilities so quickly, can you speak, I guess, to the speed, like how quickly something like that can be done, and how do you think that would impact the vulnerability of a bank? And maybe speak a little bit about machine learning, AI, and exactly kind of what that is, or just whatever you want.
Sure.
But that's a simple proposition, I think. But
It is. And again, that's a subject we could spend days discussing. The short answer is they should be very wary of it coming. The the speed with which that kind of technology could be deployed against them in an exam or as part of an enforcement action is absurd. What the way machine learning models work is you gather tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of data, and you basically train the computer to find the patterns in that data. Once that's done, it's done. That's why ChatGPT can work as quickly as it does, and these other models like it, is because they've previously been trained on data that teaches it what it needs to know about whatever the context of the problem is. So in ChatGPT, it's any number of things. It's sort of trained more or less on the whole internet. So you can ask it to write a dissertation on uh, the effects of cats who live around ant colonies, and it'll do it. I don't. It's insane. You can ask it to draw you a picture of an astronaut on the surface of Mars having a cup of tea, and it'll do that in 10 seconds. I mean, it's to take that very general technology, that very general approach, specialize it for finding patterns and bias in financial data. You're talking about seconds. That within seconds of feeding such a model, which I guarantee you the regulators either have or they're building. Um, Within seconds of feeding it the bank's data, it'll be able to uncover these problems and be able to prove them how it found those problems. Not just suggest that there might be a problem, but say, here is the data that supports the problem that I have found. So, yeah,
yeah,
it's a problem. Not a problem. It's a reality. It is a fact of doing business in this day and age, and it's going to continue to be so, and it's going to continue to have more and more of a profound impact on what the day-to-day looks like, and what the banks need to be doing to understand their own data and prepare for these inevitable exams and frankly possible enforcement actions.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's one of the things that I think to me that makes this so significant is
Yeah.
being able to, because you think about what that'll do. Not only does that expand the capabilities of the government to find issues, but then just the speed. So let's just say that uh, now today they're able to look at, I don't know, pick a number, 20% of whatever they would like to look at, simply because of the time. They just don't have
Mm-hmm.
unlimited time. Well, all
Sure.
of a sudden, you've got this unbelievable speed, and maybe you can speak a little more to the speed about how quickly these things, operate. I guess, what I look at as a benchmark is if I'm on my computer, my iPad, or whatever, and I start searching like an address. It's like populated the address before
Mm-hmm.
I can finish it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm talking anywhere in the world. So how
Yeah.
does that work, John? I mean, that what we're talking about here? That type of power, or what?
Yes. It won't be quite as fast as that. Not but it is very similar. So that's a great example of what this technology does. The reason it's able to finish the address before you even get finished typing, I can start typing the number of the street address, and
Yeah,
it more often than not knows what I'm talking about. And that's because these models have been trained. They understand who you are. They understand where you live and the types of searches you normally make, the types of places you normally search for. So it finds likely matches to those addresses in those areas. Again, take that same approach, apply it to all of the financial data a bank produces. It won't be quite as fast as that necessarily, but indistinguishably. I mean, it makes no difference if it takes a minute or 10 minutes or a day. We're doing things at a speed it's not only that it's so fast. It's not only that they could send this data into these models and within minutes, hours, no minutes, within minutes would have analytical results showing the potential problems in that data. That's not even the issue. It's able to find problems that could not have been found before. That absent the power of these models, no team of humans had the capacity to find. it, it's just impossible. It goes right back to your professor and his 3-ring binder full of equations that took 6 months. Multiply that problem a billionfold, and those are the kinds of problems that these models and these computer systems, these technologies are going to be able to solve. There is no combination of human talent that could do the same thing. Yeah. So, and it can do it within minutes on top of all of that. So yeah, it's a new world.
So one more point related to that. So when you're talking about it's able to do that, like I was giving the example, typing the address, and before you can even finish it, it's already populated it. It's doing that all based on modeling, right? And all based on statistics. Is that correct?
100%.
So
100%.
Probability, it's narrowing its conditional probabilities. Well, you're in this area, you're on this computer, you're on this URL, or, and so at light speed, it's doing these calculations and predicting, but it's all statistics.
Yep.
And it's all technology. There's not an economist sitting there, has built a model to do this. It's building itself in some ways, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. These are all self-trained. No, not self-training is going a little bit far. It's not far off. These are all constantly evolving models. So every day they're being fed new data.
But would it be safe to say, or would it be correct to say that they may not be whatever you said, self-training? They're self-learning, aren't they? I mean, that like every time I do a search.
Yes. In that respect, yes. They have parameters within which they learn, and yes, they're constantly learning more about you. And in the case of these more personalized types of models, the same thing applies. The more data you continue to feed these models, the more they draw the connections, the more they connect the synapses among the neurons, among the the network of brains that these models comprise. So yeah, it's not there is no finish line. There is no stopping point at which, this is the end of what it can understand. No, it's going to continue to evolve of its own accord. Really. So yeah, and there was an interesting point there you made. So it's in the case of the address line that you type a street address into and it finishes it for you. You use the word predict, and that's a great point. It's predicting the chance that you're looking for the address to the local hardware store. That's an important point to remember. Models are not perfect. No, nothing is. No technology is. No machine learning model is. They are drawing maps of probabilities that this is what happened, or that this is what this data means. And that's again where it's so important for the banks to have their own analysis, their own way of looking at that data to explain, okay, you think there's a problem, this is why there isn't, because this is the other context that you're missing. So yeah, it's a complex world, but like I said, it's banks need to be aware of it, need to be thinking about it, need to be working either internally or with a third party who can help them to understand all of these things and what story their data is really telling.
Yeah. So I want to just explore one more aspect with you. So we talked about the data and the predictive power and so forth, and the speed by which they can analyze data and everything. So let's shift gears just a minute and talk about something that I think would impact every bank, and that's we had talked before about the ability of some of these applications to analyze graphics. So not digital information like in terms of numbers and so forth, but the ability to look at graphics, pictures or whatever, and make interpretation, ingest that information and turn it into data, looking at images and so forth. So I guess what I think about is every bank is doing online marketing. Many are doing online originating of loans, taking applications. They're all doing social media, advertising, promotion, that type of thing. So all that information, whether they realize it or not, is all out there. Like you talked about the chat GPT, it accesses the whole internet and it's getting all this information. So what kind of risk do you think a bank would have there, in terms of images, things they've posted, other how accessible would that be for these type of technologies to be able to retrieve, analyze, and do anything with that? And I guess how far away are we from something like that?
That's not a problem I've actually thought about before. Certainly the technology can do it. That there's no question about that. I don't know that it's necessarily a good use of the technology right now. It's easy enough to sort of have a human analyze those things and break down the kind of imagery they're using or those sorts of things. So I'm not sure exactly how that would fit into the equation right now. Certainly the technology is capable of doing it. So if it becomes an area, and I know we've seen in recent discussions, not with the CFPB, but with another regulator and one of the banks we work with, they are taking a very close look at their marketing efforts and what they've done. So it may well be that this becomes important to these kinds of automated analyses and determinations of
Yeah.
bias or risk. So yeah, technology can certainly do it. There's no question about that. They can rip their entire social presence and every blog post and email and marketing flyer that they've ever sent out and feed it into these same models. And yeah, absolutely, it could certainly be included in the equation.
Yeah. I guess I think about, let's just take one of the hot topics now, redlining and the marketing efforts, what the bank is doing marketing wise. So what are they going to do? They're going to look at marketing materials. They're going to look at, okay, what images are you using? Is it just all males? If it's a business advertisement, is it all just males? Men, entrepreneurial looking, whatever. And so it's kind of an eyeball kind of thing. I guess my thinking in asking that question is that something they can suck the data in and quickly analyze that and say, well, 1 out of 5 ads were all males, or 1 out of 5 were, there weren't any females in there. Does it just expand the ability to analyze that data and then find, certain things that they may have said in a post, or a social media announcement that, they tied together with this one. Okay, you take these together, this looks, like there's some bias in here. You see what I'm saying? Being able to, I guess, quantify some things that right now are more qualitative.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, that's certainly, yeah, that's like I said, I don't know that it's even necessary for them to do that at this point. But yes, maybe it's certainly getting there. And yeah, absolutely, they could feed it the full export of their social media campaigns, advertisements they've run on any platform, and absolutely the technology could analyze it and determine um, you know, races, ethnicities, genders, ages. It could determine economic qualities. Do they look like rich people or average Americans or lower income populations? So yeah, absolutely. They could certainly feed all of that data, whether visual or textual or numeric or whatever it is, into these models and find those kinds of, if nothing else, give them exactly like you said, the breakdowns. In 9 out of 10 of your advertisements, you featured um, male, heterosexual appearing, wealthy appearing, um, white men. And so, yeah, absolutely, they could at least go that far with it to use these technologies to analyze that. But like I said, I don't know that they that would even be that useful yet. But certainly it's a possibility, and yeah, should be considered.
So I'm gonna just kind of sum up, I guess, my takeaways from what I see, and I'd like you to do the same. But when I look at the press release and kind of what's being signaled here, and you sort of hit on it earlier about banks being able to handle the quantity of the information and really needing support, needing outside third party support. One of the main things that comes to mind is every time that if our banks that we are in routine analysis, we do routine analysis for, typically they already have, the data they're giving us is pretty static. They've already sort of done everything they need to do to pull that, fairly quickly. But things change, policies change, things they do change. We need additional data points.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I'm always really surprised at is whenever there is a change, how long, especially for the larger banks, it actually takes to get that additional data. That their technology people, their data people, whoever's handling that, are just so overwhelmed by all the other demands. As technology grows, there's more demands on technology. And we probably do that to you, thinking, "Oh, John can do this now. He can
Not
do
at all. No, never.
that." But so I just think about that from that. So that's one of the vulnerabilities I think banks really have to look at is can
Yes.
you quickly ramp up your your technology and data resources, and you probably can't. So you really do need to be able to tap into outside sources that are there to be able to help you with that. So that's one of the main, I guess, one of my takeaways. And the other is the enormous amount of data that's out there that's not really being analyzed at all right now, that banks have. It's stored. And so if, it's certainly in an enforcement action, if they ask for it, they're going to get it. But even in the regulatory context, even if the bank says, hey, we don't think this information's, organized or good or whatever, if the regulators demand that information, they're going to have to turn it over. So there's a lot of vulnerability, I think, there. And then I also think from the, the advertising side of it, there's some vulnerability to some things that I think regulators, and again, the scary part is that they're talking about enforcement. There's just a lot of vulnerabilities there that I think are unmanaged. They're unevaluated, and so I think that's definitely a risk. So that's my summation.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. That's coming at it from the technology side. Yeah. So first of all, I guess, so not from the technology side, they stated unequivocally what was already sort of anecdotally obvious. Enforcement is the priority. If not the priority, it is one of the top priorities at least. We're going to see more of it. We're going to see more enforcement actions, and I don't think it's going to be strictly from the CFPB even. So these things are coming. It is, I hate to use the word adversarial, but it feels like a more adversarial industry or time in the industry at least. Banks need to be prepared for that. And so now coming at it from the technology side, agree wholeheartedly. I think banks are already producing more data than they really even understand they're producing. And that's going to continue to increase. And certainly, so I think of the data in sort of the data and the technology around it in sort of two branches. One side of it is the gathering, the storing, the preservation, the accessibility of the data itself. The other is the analysis of that data. So firms like Premier, what we do, we're more focused on the analysis side. We're more focused on taking the data that you already have, find and analyzing it, both from more of the pure statistical side. That's a very hard word to say. More from the pure statistics side in some ways, and more from the analytical, technology-driven, automatic monitoring type side. But we're focused on looking at the data rather than gathering it, storing it, keeping it, improving the production of it, etc. So banks need to be focused on both. They need to have those teams, usually I would say internally, that are maintaining those data resources, that they're keeping up with it, they're preserving it, keeping it accessible. But then they also need to have the analytical side in place, whether that's in-house, and there are some banks who do it, or with a third party. And I know we've even seen, I don't remember which one it was, I have seen specific encouragement from the regulators to banks saying you need to be working with a third party to look at this. So obviously we're here. We want you to work with us. We would love to work with you. But if not us, find somebody. Find somebody who can help you understand what your data is saying, the story it's telling. Certainly the story it's going to tell to the regulators when they come knocking. So this was a great article, great conversation about it. I think that's a good place to sort of wrap it up. But if you're interested, you the viewer, in learning more about these subjects, certainly you can visit us at premierinsights.com and take a look at our blog. We've written considerably about these issues over the years, and we'll continue to. And this is sort of a new avenue of discussion that we're trying with the video discussion here today. So if you like it, let us know. Send us an email, comment, something. Tell us you'd like more. And if you do want to see more, like I said, visit premierinsights.com, check out the blog, and you can subscribe, and you'll be notified when we post things like this in the future. Any parting thoughts or words there, Brendan?
No, I appreciate it, John. I think you said it all there. And as you said, I mean, we're here to help. I mean, our whole team we're here to help you, assist you. And we sometimes seem to maybe work ourselves out of a job because we fix problems, and that's sort of our emphasis. But we're here, and you do need to have a partner. I mean, there's just no question. I would love to be that partner, but obviously you have to have a partner. It's just not going to be able to survive this environment going forward without it. So
Absolutely.
We appreciate you listening and your time.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.